with Pooh Shiesty being sentenced to 8 years in prison for one of his court cases so far, we have finally been given an update on what will happen with his second court case. This will give us a time frame on his overall prison sentence and when he'll be officially released. We need to talk about this, so let's get straight into it. Now, as reported from the courtroom, rapper Pooh Shiesty is no longer facing life in prison for using a firearm in an armed robbery in Miami, Florida. Now, Shiesty and his lawyers got a deal made with the courtroom that helps Pooh Shiesty avoid life in prison. Shiesty pled guilty to a federal firearm charge in exchange for 8 years in prison. Rather than going through a trial which could last years and ultimately Shiesty being sentenced to life in prison, a plea deal given to him offering him 8 years in federal prison is a no-brainer. Now, with that case finally ending, we have finally gotten a huge update in his second case. Now, in the courtroom, they gave a detailed timeline on what happened. It starts by saying, and I quote, "Memphis rapper Pooh Shiesty was performing for a crowd at the King of Diamonds club. During his performance, Shiesty was seen having $40,000 worth of cash sitting in his skinny jeans pockets. Now, according to the arrest warrant, Pooh Shiesty was performing, and midway throughout his performance, somebody in the crowd noticed the stack of cash in the back of his pockets. So while Shiesty was performing, this person in the crowd was waiting for Shiesty to get close. Once close enough, the man in the crowd ended up smacking the $40,000 worth of cash out of his back pocket. All of the money then fell onto the floor, and everybody in the crowd started swarming the cash, grabbing it, and running straight out of the club. While everything was going down, Shiesty then hopped off of the stage trying to retrieve his own money, but obviously had no luck in doing so. Shiesty was then seen storming out of the club after the individuals who stole his cash. While exiting the club, a man that was recording in the back near the exit doors ended up catching Shiesty on film pulling a firearm out of his waistband. A few moments after, you can then hear a firearm being used outside of the club. Witnesses claim that a security guard and Shiesty were having an argument outside of the club until Shiesty used a firearm against the security guard. And this is where the new massive update now comes out in the court case. Allegedly, the security guard that Shiesty used a firearm against no longer wants to press charges against the Memphis rapper. The security guard takes back all statements that he gave law enforcement at the scene. He claims that he no longer remembers if he saw Shiesty aim and use a firearm towards him. This is due to what the paramedics gave him when arriving to the scene. The paramedics gave him a medicine to help deal with all of the pain he was going through while being escorted to the local hospital. He claims that the medication ended up giving him memory loss and he no longer wants to press charges as he doesn't remember who actually did it. So this is obviously huge for Shiesty, but it makes you wonder how much money did Shiesty and his lawyers pay the security guard? And let's just be real, Gucci Mane is gonna do everything in his power to make sure his biggest artist on his label 1017 doesn't go to prison for life, so they definitely handed the security guard a check. Now, having lawyers like Shiesty does will help him out in a huge way. Coming from lawyers online that overlooked his court case and even gave their thoughts about it, they stated that if his lawyers were able to get Shiesty out of a case with only 8 years in prison for using a firearm in an armed robbery against 2 individuals, then this case where Shiesty was only seen using a firearm towards one person who no longer even wants to press charges is gonna be very easy. It actually makes it almost safe to assume that Shiesty will most likely be getting off with 5 to 8 years in prison for this court case as well. This means that Shiesty is looking at 13 to 16 years in prison, but with good behavior, he can actually be out a lot sooner. Now, Shiesty and his lawyers were able to get around the 10-20 life rule, which was very surprising. In case you're unaware, the 10-20 life rule is a very simple thing to understand. You'll be put into prison for 10 years if you pull out a firearm in public without a license. 20 years in prison if you pull out a firearm and you use it without defending yourself. Then you'll be sentenced to 25 to life in prison if you pull out a firearm and use it towards someone that is then affected by it. Now, Shiesty was made well aware of the rule at the start of his court case, and it even showed in his first court hearing. Now, in Shiesty's first court hearing, the courtroom made aware that Shiesty is most likely looking at life in prison. This is then when we saw Shiesty enter the courtroom wearing what's called a turtle suit. Now, typically while in jail, if you're having a very hard time, saying things about your own life, caught crying in your jail cell, things in that nature, then law enforcement will then take your clothing and all of your belongings and only give you this suit to wear. As you cannot do anything to yourself with this suit on, it's obviously a very sensitive subject. But luckily, Shiesty has some amazing lawyers. Shiesty's lawyers were so good, they were able to beat some of the best evidence in a court case that I've ever seen. Some of the evidence files in his court case that were released to the public that was supposed to stay private is right here in this video. Now, in his first court case, this Instagram photo of Shiesty was actually used against him. In this photo, you can see Shiesty standing beside a bright green McLaren sports car. And funny enough, this photo was posted the same day that Shiesty did an armed robbery against two individuals in. The next piece of evidence was a Louis Vuitton bag that was holding $40,912 of cash. Now, this Louis Vuitton bag actually ended up falling out of Pooh Shiesty's bright green McLaren that you may have seen earlier in the video. When Shiesty was done trying to rob the two individuals, he ended up grabbing all of the goods that he took and chucked it into his vehicle. But while doing so, because he was in a massive rush, he didn't realize that this Louis Vuitton bag fell out of his McLaren, and this is also a really big reason as to why he's going to be sentenced in this court case. Now, before this all went down, Shiesty uploaded several photos to his Instagram of him doing the money stretch across his body type thing. The feds actually downloaded these photos off Instagram, zoomed in on them, and on those photos, the serial number on the bills matched with the serial number of the cash that was in the bag. This means that it was Shiesty's bag of money, and it means that it was his vehicle that was participating in an armed robbery. Now, this is very severe evidence when you take a look at the overall court case. It is an actual miracle that Shiesty got away with this with only 8 years in prison. He's definitely going to be paying a massive bill to his lawyers. But for his last case with the King of Diamonds Club and the security guard, nobody really knows what is going to happen. If the security guard wants to drop all charges, then great. But it doesn't mean that Shiesty will just be off of the hook. If you want to stay up to date for that court case, make sure you hit the subscribe button and leave a like if you're new. Anyways, it's been District Trending and I'm out. Peace.